With the rising cost of electricity, clients are asking us more often, should they get solar? And they're curious about how much, if any, value it adds to their home. While this may vary from state to state, here in Hawaii, we've noticed that there's one main factor, and that's whether you lease or own the system. So typically, buying solar panels is really a positive thing. It reduces your home's electricity bill, it's a renewable source of energy, and you can get credits on your tax returns. But in some of our clients' experiences, this hasn't always been the case in the past, particularly when leasing is in the equation. So let's talk about a couple of the downsides with leasing as opposed to owning. So number one, there's no solar incentives or rebates. When leasing the panels, you typically don't qualify for the federal, state, or local tax credits or rebates that these incentives usually go to. These will end up going to the system's owner, which in this case is the solar company. Number two is that there's less flexibility. With leasing contracts, there can come a lot of limitations. For example, if you want to upgrade your system or you want to terminate your lease early, and depending on the provider, there's sometimes substantial fees that come with terminating your lease early. And now number three is the potential issues when selling your home. Now this is a big one because if you decide to sell your home before the lease term ends, the new homeowner must agree to take over your lease, which can really complicate or even jeopardize the entire sale. And this is somewhat understandable because potential buyers won't always want to agree to those exact terms. They could be reluctant to have to be locked into this contract that they didn't necessarily agree to in the first place. So if you have any possibility of selling your home before the lease is completed, just be really cautious about getting a lease on your solar. Now the next downside to leasing is the reduced long-term savings. So leasing a solar PV system can seem cheaper initially, because there's little to no upfront costs. But buying your PV system outright is often more cost effective in the long run. Because once you've recouped the initial investment through the savings on your electricity bill, the electricity generated is essentially free. So the next thing is that there's no increased property value. And this is another big one in terms of real estate. Because leased solar panels do not increase your home's value in the same way that purchased panels do. Since the leasing company retains ownership of the system, and appraisers can value them in the assessment of your home. So with all of that said, let's discuss some of the positives of owning to give you a good comparison. Number one, you get to keep the tax credits as the owner, lowering your taxes via the energy credits. Number two, it directly adds to your home's value, since it can be viewed as a legitimate upgrade to the home by the appraiser. And after discussing with some appraisers, we found that around $750 to $1,000 is attributed per panel, depending on the age and the total number of panels. So the next thing I want to bring up is the battery backup. And this could actually be applicable to leasing as well, but I think the whole concept of self-sustainability and the freedom to be able to control your own electricity has more weight to it when you do own the system. And of course, you can use these battery systems as an emergency backup during power outages, as well as being able to just retain the power you collect during the day and use it during the night when costs are typically more expensive. And the last benefit here I'm going to talk about is net metering, which is when you generate more electricity than you use, you can actually sell it back to HECO to use in the power grid and make some profit from your unused electricity. Now, something to note here is that net metering is no longer offered in Hawaii for new systems being installed, but if you purchase a home that has an existing system that does have net metering, it is being grandfathered in, so you will still have those benefits. And just another side note I wanted to bring up is that it's always important to keep a copy of your solar contract on file. This is important for your own reference, but also it's great to just have it on hand because you will need it in the future if you ever do decide to sell your home. So in order to help you navigate this solar and PV landscape a little better, here's a few questions you may want to ask any company that is pitching you solar, or before you decide to make a purchase of a PV system. Just consider these few things. Number one is towards the end of the installation job, you want to be sure to check that the permits are all closed and you have proof of that. We had some cases where clients went to go sell their home and they then realized that the permits were never closed, causing delays and further issues for them. So it's good to just check up front to make sure that's all tucked away. Number two, you're going to want to ask what kind of warranties are included. Number three is to check whether or not the provider will handle the paperwork for acquiring the permit and filling out any credits or incentives. And you also just want to clarify whose responsibility that is so you can make sure they get done. Number four is to confirm the panels are installed in the correct location. So I have had clients that didn't confirm this and only found out that when we went to go do the drone shots for the sale of their home, that panels were actually in a completely different place than they initially thought they were, since they never ended up getting up there. We've also had situations where the installation caused leaks in the roof, and once it was moved, the leaks stopped. So the location of the panels is really important for more than just the optimization of the sunlight exposure. Number five, and this is another big one you're really going to want to consider, is what is the total cost of getting solar? This includes installation, maintenance, cleaning, and Be sure to budget for potentially replacing inverters maybe every 10 to 15 years. Number 6, which also ties in with number 5, is does this really save me money? With all those considerations, you can now calculate if it really is cost effective or not. So with all that said, yes, getting PVs can certainly add value to your home. But owning tends to be better than leasing, even if you have to finance it. Since many of our clients that have gone the leasing route have kind of just noticed very negligible savings in leasing. But hey, if owning isn't an option for you, then really weigh out all the factors of leasing to make sure it's really worth it. And if there's one thing you can take away from this, aside from the benefits of owning over leasing, is that do your due diligence on which companies you use and what all of their terms are. And don't necessarily always go with the first company to knock on your door and give you a great sales pitch. So if you're curious about who we recommend for our clients' solar needs, feel free to reach out to us with a DM or an email, and we'll be glad to share any of that information with you. And please feel free to share your experiences with PV in the past, either good or bad, in the comments. I would love to hear them. And if you want to read up a little more about HECO's specific policies within their programs of smart renewable energy, I'll link it below, so go ahead and check that out. All right, hope that was helpful. My name is Michael Wong of Team Wong Hawaii. Until next time, take care, stay well, and peace.